This is the MOIRÉ. MOIRÉ Media Collective proudly presents
MOIRÉ Screen Studies
with your hosts,
Darryl, Ayles,
and Devon King.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Please come in, put down your bags, and take a seat as we begin the newest journey for the MOIRÉ Media Collective.
This is episode 2, Rashomon. Well, that's like your opinion, man. Or how I learned to stop worrying and love the truth. Rashomon is an action courtroom drama that was released in 1950, directed by the legendary Akira Kurosawa. The story follows the assault of a bride and the murder of her samurai husband. The event is recalled from the perspective of a bandit, the bride, the samurai's ghost, and a woodcutter. Kurosawa has also directed Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, and Seven Samurai.
Akira Kurosawa is considered to be one of the most important and influential filmmakers of all time for Eastern and Western cinema. And Rashomon is a quintessential classic in that regard, and perhaps the most accessible of his films, given that Seven Samurai is almost 3.5 hours long, and this clocks in just under 90 minutes, but also really damn good film. But yeah, you're joined today by, of course, Darryl and myself, and we'd like to introduce our guest, who, if you have been following the channel for some time, you probably recognize him right away. Welcome, Ian.
Hello, everybody. It's me. I'm Ian. I've written on the side. I've worked at all kinds of places in London, and right now I'm working on my feature-length script, and I'm really happy to be on here. Like, I'm seriously proud of you guys. Like, I just want to mention real quick, we started up a podcast because of me. It completely fell through, and you guys are just picking up the pieces and doing such a good job. I appreciate it.
I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, man. I mean, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this server. It was because of you that you reached out, and it was during the pandemic, and you're like, hey, I want to start doing this podcast thing. Do you want to be a part of it? And I'm like, okay, sure. But I couldn't have imagined all the stuff that would have come just from that one question and the journey we've been on. And you have been the host of the original podcast that we hosted on this channel. The two original shows that we had, or I guess the original show, the Tuesdays/Thursdays with MOIRÉ, before that dissolved, and then we went to Montage à Trois, and now we're here.
No, it's great to be back, man. Like, to have you back. I mean, it's so nice to have the whole gang doing it again. You know.
Struggles.
Yeah, dude. I love starting from, the earliest and moving forward. It was a really good start last week. I enjoyed, the beginnings by touching on some silent film, because I feel like not many people talk about that anymore. And then, we're doing a bit of a jump. So it's, it's 23 years between the movies. But like you said, it's amazing how a film from, 1950 can feel so relevant. I guess not just relevant, but like still, it doesn't reek of the, I don't know, the issues that a lot of older films have, in my opinion. There's going to be a few films before we get to some color film. We still got Night of the Hunter and 8.5. So yeah, we're staying in the black and white for a while, which I really dig.
Yeah, if you've never really watched a black and white film before, there's a lot of culture and history that has been captured in black and white. It's a limitation of the medium, but so much was still expressed given those limitations. And I think this film and so many other films like it are a prime example of working within limitations and expressing a lot from seemingly very little.
That's a great toss-up for my first topic, if you wouldn't mind me jumping into it.
Go for it.
To just touch on last week real quickly, if people didn't catch it, Gabby, our guest, was talking about how nitrate film was very dangerous and flammable, and that's kind of necessary information going into my next piece. So, because of the fact that it was very easily flammable, there was a single technique that before Rashomon had never really been properly executed. But based on the faith that Kurosawa had in his DP, they took a risk together. And what I'm referring to is called a lens flare, or just a direct shot of the sun, for that matter. both were kind of like frowned upon in general because of the nitrate film. So exposing, a single frame is easy enough, but when the film is running, you have a real danger of it actually catching fire and not just ruining the film that's inside and everything else you shot that day, but the camera itself. So yeah, you kind of have to be pretty ballsy to take it this next step further, and it was definitely not a traditional style of filmmaking, and showed a shift of some kind. Also, it's worth mentioning on the topic of flammable film that it almost became detrimental to production when they were beginning to do sound work on the film because a reel caught fire. And that was kind of common occurrence back in the day. But what happened that night was kind of crazy. They tried to put it out with a fire extinguisher, and the gas that the fire extinguisher released, it kind of mixed with the gases being released from the film, and it created like a weird chemical gas kind of deal that it basically knocked a couple people out that were in the theater, and everybody else was just like grabbing reels and running out of there trying to save the film. So yeah, it was absolutely insane scenes, all because of nitrate film. And yeah, I believe the only thing that was actually lost that night in all the craziness was the original audio take of the bandit saying she was the fiercest woman I had ever seen. Besides that, everything else was recovered, and you can kind of hear the noticeable difference of that one single line too, which is funny. It always bugged the sound mixer who ended up doing that. Yeah, but lastly, I did just want to touch on the editing because like it is really so incredible, not just for 1950 but for today. Like the shot lengths are really short. Like it is a really fast-paced film, and for back then, this film consists of 407 shots, which is almost twice what a normal film would have had at the same length. So yeah, this was pretty rapid for back then. But yeah, no, nowadays it kind of just feels right. It's kind of what we're used to. No, which makes this really rewatchable in my opinion. It doesn't hold me back in the way that other silent films and older movies do, with where pacing does kind of tend to be the shortfall. Nowadays we're so saturated in films that a proper pacing is almost second nature. But back in the day, it wasn't really so much the case. That's not to say it was flawed or anything, but I think this film fits in more than maybe even a couple of the next films we're about to watch on the podcast. So yeah, that's pretty much it though, man. Like the execution of editing is just incredible. It's like a perfect mix of gorgeous cinematography, incredible acting, and the editing's like the cherry on top, man. Like it is really a 5 out of 5 for me. So that's
Hey, spoilers. Can't
no,
tell
we
that
don't.
yet.
No, that's just for perspective.
You have to
man.
gatekeep them for the whole episode first.
No, we don't even give ratings, man. That's just I tend to if it's relevant. So. Feel free if you want, but that's it for me, man. Like I freaking love it. I got some more stuff that I'll get into a little later, but yeah, no, I think like you were just talking about, Devon, I think it's the evolution, and like we take for granted. I mean, not just digital, but celluloid was a step up of its own. Like what they we became used to for so many years. It was far more stable and preservable. And yeah, but thankfully we don't have a Metropolis situation here where we've got the full cut of the film. But no, it's really cool to see where it all began and see how they stepped up through it, right? Because
oh, absolutely. And I did want to touch on that one shot that you were talking about, because it really stuck out to me, just them pointing the sun or the camera right at the sun. That is definitely something you don't see at the time, and this very well may have been the very first film that attempted that, because nitrate film was very flammable, and that's not something you really think about these days. I mean, maybe you might worry about damaging your digital sensor if you point a laser at it, which I've done. Don't recommend it. But I've grown up taking like sunset photography. It's something that I've dabbled in quite a bit, so it is very much in line with my sensibilities when I see shots like that. But at the time, that was 100% a risk that you'd not only damage the film, but potentially your whole camera could combust just pointing your lens at it, which is crazy to me to think about. But I love that the risks that this film takes to capture those images and to tell the story. And I did want to touch a little bit on just the writing process. So I was looking at the Criterion disc of this film, which I highly recommend. It's Criterion has some excellent features that they include. One of which was a feature documentary called "A Testimony as an Image," and they were interviewing one of the screenwriters, Shinobu Hashimoto. He adapted a couple different short stories by Runyo Seikei Atomodara. I'm 100% butchering that. I'm going to try to edit that in later.
Ryunosuke Akutagawa.
Anyway, so this person, Hashimoto, was commissioned or asked by Kurosawa to adapt some stories, or attempted to adapt some stories. And there was two by this author that he came across in a grove and Rashomon that he brought together in a hybrid script. And then Akira finished it himself when Hashimoto wasn't feeling well. And in this interview, he details all these coincidences and twists of fate that happened, that if this person didn't meet this person, when we were mourning this friend of ours, these elements wouldn't have come together. This film wouldn't have happened. And there's just something so magical about that. And I love these films that feel like lightning in a bottle, and essentially they are, because of all these perfect elements that just happen to come together to make it happen. And I think this story has been so influential in terms of, narrative storytelling, and how people often have battling perspectives of the same events. And this film perfectly illustrates that. And Ian, I believe you wanted to go off on what is considered the Rashomon effect.
Oh, yes.
So the Rashomon effect is very interesting because you can see ripples of it all over, like, even our modern world. It's a phenomenon that describes when multiple people have different but contradictory accounts of the same event. For example, like somebody kills a cow. Somebody, 5 people watched it, and every person has a different story. One person thinks they were right in killing that cow because they had to provide for the family. Another person might say they killed that cow for sport, not for hunting. They have more than enough meat. Point is, almost every story has personal biases, personal points of view, and more importantly, especially in the case of this movie with the different perspectives, a case of ego that tends to get in the way and filter out the truth. And for that, I think I have to ask the big question, because, of course, Rashomon is based off of 3 perspectives, and just like the effect itself, well, technically 4 perspectives.
4,
but we'll get into that. And that much as a plot twist later on in the movie that was, very cleverly handled. And I want to get into that in a little bit, but I want to stove that off for now. I want to ask you guys the existential question. Whose perspective is the right one? Or what do you think really happened?
Well, I mean, going off what you just said before, I think the Rashomon effect, to me, it has a place in law enforcement. And I think in that regard, I would say it has to be the overlap of each story, like where the most similarities seem to occur. And then it's kind of a judgment on character from there. I wouldn't say that any of these perspectives are any one is the right one. I think this film's strength is that there are no. It reflects life in that way, right? That there is no true perspective, unless God was a character. You know what I mean, or whatever omnipotent force you want to call. Yeah. So that's my take. What do you say, Devon?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I'm not quite sure that there is a right perspective necessarily. And I do think that is the point that they're making, is that, humans lie, and we have all these reasons and justifications for what we do and why. And there's a beautiful conversation that gets very philosophical at the end with the characters that I'll get into later, that really details, like you try to find the overlaps and inconsistencies between, what happened, and that's probably closer to the truth. But we are, I think, by design, never going to ever fully understand the truth. But it is the question that drives us to Neo.
No, and I like that they all touch too on evidence. I don't know if it's ever directly pointed out, because it's like, it's a 12th century something or other courtroom, so it's not necessarily what we're used to.
Yeah, this is very
different standards.
I almost said the term medieval, but that's more applicable to England's, where this is very much more I don't want to say primitive. That doesn't sound right.
No. I think they said it was 12th century though. I think that's when the story's based.
That sounds about right. It's definitely not the modern idea of a courtroom. It is a lot of he said, she said, which, by the way, the original story that this was kind of based on, also that Akira Kurosawa, I think, had a draft, or the original title they were going to go for was Man, Woman, I think. So
no,
essentially,
I thought it was literally he said, she said.
Or male, female, but I would essentially say it's like he said, she said the movie.
It might just be a rough translation of that saying. You know what I mean? But like I was saying about evidence, though, I think there's a cool consistency with a lot of what happens, right? Like, no matter what happens in each story, the samurai always ends up stabbing into the ground, and then the knife, the handheld knife, always falls. You know what I mean? So there's little things that, like, it's almost like they shape their own truth around the things you can't argue, which I really like that detail for sure.
Yeah, each perspective simultaneously makes themselves look good, but interestingly enough, they also blame themselves for the murder in different ways. And of course, the first perspective, played by the excellent Toshiro Mifune, who we complimented before on the podcast, and the Seventh Samurai. I wanted to mention this in the Seventh Samurai, but like one review I read described him as like a dog wearing samurai's armor, and if that doesn't describe how good of an actor this guy is, I don't know what does. But anyways, Tachimaru, even just little details, as soon as he brings out the fact that he was dragged unconscious by horseback, he's like, no, that wasn't how it went. I ran for weeks. It must have been a snake. Like, he can't let the smallest blow to his ego come to pass. But all of the characters suffer from that one way or another, even the fourth perspective to an extent. Like, sure, it looks ridiculous to an onlooker, but he has no concept of what happened. And of course, conveniently, if everyone else looks bad, everybody else was more or less guilty, he can be innocent himself. And that's a very interesting through line with all the different perspectives. And of course, the third perspective as well, where they take slightly drastic measures and speak through the ghost of the now dead husband. And even from that perspective, even from a perspective that is questionable at best, he still tries to make himself look innocent. Well, to say that, like, even perspectives from those long gone still have a bias to them that we need to consider.
Oh yeah, his take is just baked in animosity for his wife.
Yeah, well, and for Tashmar, of course.
Yeah, that whole scene with the medium channeling the dead husband to give his testimony was so fascinating and very poetic. And I love the imagery of, this robe just kind of caught in the wind as she's like channeling that voice. But it does really lead to the idea of an unreliable narrator, in which case all these characters to some degree are. Yes, there's consistencies. There's an objective reality that happened in between all of what they said, but there's so little overlap that it's kind of hard to discern. And it is that, perplexing nature of reality that eludes us all.
It's the why that gets lost that's so tragic. And I think that's something else the film is trying to say. And I wanted to bring this up because there's some interesting perspectives. Reviews I've read online, people I talked to back in Fanshawe when I first watched this movie, they seem to think that the fourth view is the truth, the inherent truth. And that the rain disappearing at the end of the movie was symbolic for the truth finally coming out. And not that I'm going against that perspective, but I really have to disagree with it. Because I think what the film is inevitably saying is there is no such thing as a whole truth, but there is beauty in acceptance that there is no such thing as a whole truth. Does it matter why the husband was killed, or does it matter that he was killed? Does it matter why the baby was abandoned at the temple? Or does it just matter that the baby was abandoned by the temple and they have to move on and take care of it? And I think that's what really matters. We shouldn't obsess so much over the finer details, but we should obsess over what we can do about it and how we can proceed.
Oh yeah, I love that whole scene at the end. And spoilers for those that haven't seen this film, you shouldn't be listening to this podcast if you haven't. By the way,
right?
Just we're
and the film's only over 70 years old. That's fine.
Oh, yeah. This is probably the most accessible Akira Kurosawa film to get into. It's like not even an hour and a half. What are you doing? Go watch it. But I absolutely love the conflict that happens at the end when there's this helpless baby that interrupts their conversation, and the one bandit decides to take its blanket, and it absolutely disgusts the other two, morally speaking. He has a great bit of dialogue at the end saying, "I don't have time to mind everyone's feelings." Then he accuses of being selfish. He says, "What's wrong with that? Dogs are better off in this world. If you're not selfish, you can't survive." Um, which, yeah, there's an argument there. But then I love the priests and him at the end saying that they are helping restore each other's sense of humanity because at least someone is caring for the helpless and caring for people that can't care for themselves. And I thought it was a beautiful note to really end on this whole film. Um,
Is it possible that he was trying to abandon one of his 6 children and got caught, and that's why he's like so sad about taking the kid, and it's just yet another lie?
I mean,
I think I think
I'm
it's
here
just
to
the fact
throw-
that he has 6 kids, and he was just like, "Yeah, I guess so." Take care of a 7th one. Why not? Oh, 6 kids is already so fun to deal with. Well, I'm obviously exaggerating, but I think that's perfect.
I think it was clear that none of them knew that baby was there. Although how it got there is a mystery.
No, well, that's it. He was already there. Like, he
Exactly.
could just be acting. Hey, I'm here to throw batshit theories at the audience every chance I get. Right?
Oh no,
So-
it's fun.
So that's my crackpot theory of this. Go ahead and
I
throw
love
the
those
fucking
little monkey wrench theories. It's fun.
exactly. Throw the
Yeah.
mind blowing thing over this one too. but yeah, man. I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there's a certain thing to his performance in the end, like not just as a joke. There's a weird note to how the woodcutter plays that final scene. And also
the
like what was
woodcutter
he
is
doing out in the
also-
woods? Was he
Sorry.
maybe a bit like walking home from abandoning his kid? Because he sure wasn't chopping wood. So it's like there's a lot of things that, I think this movie really taught me to look at not just what we're seeing, but what we're not seeing, which is kind of weird. But with this many perspectives, you kind of have to
Yeah.
reach that.
And also noticing if there's any incongruencies between what you're being shown and what you're hearing. Because what they tell you is one thing, what you're seeing is another. Sometimes it's very obvious and can be played as a joke that, sometimes you hear a person saying, "Oh, I was trying to help this person," and then you see footage of them clearly not trying to help this person. But things like this happen all the time, and it can happen in very subtle ways too, where what the film is showing you, what the film is telling you, can be different, and those can sometimes just be oversight in this production. I remember in that interview with all the people that worked on the show, they at one point were also like critical of like, why is he walking so deep into the woods just to cut wood, and maybe they were recognizing that perhaps that was a bit of a plot convenience just to get the ball rolling of the story. But I think we can really appreciate just the commitment that went into crafting this, and just given how limited the resources were. Darryl, I don't know if you wanted to bring this up, talking about. I'm pretty sure you wanted to talk about like the lighting and how they managed to use mirrors.
Oh man. Yeah, okay. Well, let's do the mirror bit real quick first, and I'll get into everything else because yeah. So for the high contrast hard lighting, they achieved this by using essentially like mirrors from the clothing department, so like a full length mirror that women would dress in, that kind of thing. And so they were in woods, and they would have these patches where there's just, the woods aren't built for filming. So you'd have these good areas that they kind of base stuff in where there's a lot of bleed through. But then when they're running around and there's all these, sword fights and stuff, some of those pockets they needed to specifically light in general. So they found that foil bounce wasn't good enough. So they were just straight up using mirrors to get this hard lighting and just force it into these areas. Because the other thing about trees, like we can't really see because there's no color, but you can bounce that against the leaves. Leaves are actually slightly translucent, right? So if it were shot in color, it would definitely cast an obvious green glow on the environment and skin tones. And then also, if you ever see like the opening shot opening shot of the bandit story, when he's just laying on the tree stump as they pass by, there's a prominent like bush on his face that you can see, and they did that by putting a mirror bounce and then just having somebody waving the greens in front and had like this little dance of sorts to try and work lighting in mysterious ways. And the DOP of the project is very proud of how much they were able to pull off. Kazuo Miyagawa. That is the DOP of Rashomon, which, my God, what a huge influence this movie had on me.
I believe this was the first time they worked together as well, which I think was really impressive, just how in sync they were able to get the visual language of the film. And I absolutely love that effect of seeing the light coming through the trees. It reminds me of this term that they have in Japan called tomorobi, which I first learned that from the film Perfect Days. Great film if you haven't seen it, but just the idea of like light shimmering through the trees and how it only just for that moment. There's something about just the appreciation of light as it's shaped by foliage, but in a deeper sense. Just seeing that featured all throughout the film and these really harsh shadows. Normally, like harsh light on faces isn't the most flattering look to let your characters with, but I think in this film it works brilliantly, and they did a great job utilizing the resources they had.
I think it works so well because you're talking about the environment's already being mainly lit by that harsh sunlight, right? So you're really just balancing in that regard, right? Like if you were to try and light a scene with, lights like that you buy, like tungsten lights, LED lights, and then try and bounce sunlight in, it would blow everything out. It would just be so much more powerful than everything else. But because this old school film needed so much light to expose, it was just kind of about getting it in the sweet spot, right? Like there's lots of shots like you're talking about where you see lots of nice greens on people's faces, and it doesn't quite look like like it is a mirror because of how stopped down and balanced the film is.
Oh yeah, I think it does help the fact that it is just bounced natural light that also just makes it doesn't feel like they're adding lights really. It just feels like they happen to have these perfect pockets of light. And there was one shot I remember hearing about where you see the girl by the lake and there's this beautiful pillar of light. Yeah. There's this beautiful pillar of light just where she happens to be, and that's because Akira got up super early in the morning and captured that himself to include in the film. And
that's so sweet, yeah.
And I just love that he was so committed to just capturing those moments to make this film happen. And there's a lot of coverage in this film, especially for the time, given its runtime. But I love the commitment of just packing in so much into this film, and there's so much to just dissect through and chew on.
Oh yeah. It was an early predecessor of multicam. So this is actually like one of the rare early instances of I think for them they were just like low on budget and needed to work fast. But they shot multi-camera for this. So a lot of the coverage is just the fact that they were like, get 3 great shots every single single time they were switching back. Yeah, exactly. It's like over coverage, and then so then you see it work. Like that's why I think it influences the fast pace of the edit, because they have so much to work with, and it's all relatively synced up because you're not matching a different shot every single cut.
And that also helps if there's like overlap, if they're depicting the same event that happened from different perspectives. Then it helps to have some overlap where you do see the exact same action maybe play out from 2 different angles.
Sometimes
to a certain degree, but there's big changes obviously that happen.
Because I know a big thing for Kurosawa was directing each person differently in each segment, right? Because there's way different performances from each of these. A couple of the I maybe the samurai kind of is similar in a few of them, but I mean, besides that, they're kind of all over the place, man. Like the bandit sees himself as really calm. In the end, he's like basically a wild animal, like you were mentioning before. And I feel like it's so different. Like I'm sure there's some shots where you can reuse it, definitely. A lot of the mastering stuff, for sure.
Yeah, I love the actor that plays the bandit, by the way. His name escapes me at the moment. I'm sure you know it, Ian.
Toshiro Mifune.
Yes. He's brilliant in this. He's also brilliant in Seven Samurai.
Yes.
Really terrific performances in both those films. He just comes alive on film.
What's interesting is this is the 1950, and he is basically a character actor. Like you don't see actors like Humphrey Bogart like scratching their ass or slapping mosquitoes or standing in all these strange, weird poses. It's a very interesting juxtaposition of like what was the standard of the 40s Hollywood, for example, just like very stoic, very I'm not going to say no motion whatsoever, but unless it's a comedy, they're usually pretty kind of, again, I don't want to say basic. The word escapes me at the moment.
They're more reserved,
very
perhaps.
reserved. Yeah. And this is a very, I'd imagine a very stark contrast. Just watching this maniac run around and scream. And they must have gotten 20 minutes of laughter because he just laughs so much in this movie. Unless they just found like one good sound effect from laughing and they're like, you know what? That's good enough. Let's keep using it. Again, this was very expensive. But yeah, all of the performances are very compelling. Each character just feels so different. Yep. And we have to keep in mind, in each different perspective, like a lot of the best movies with multiple perspectives, they basically have to play different characters in each different perspective. Not necessarily, a single role for them to fill out. Like Tajimaro is like largely stays the same for the most part, but Masako and Takahiro in particular are very different depending on which perspective you look into. And something I wanted to point out too is Takahiro was actually seen crying in the first perspective, in Tashimaro's perspective, but he wasn't seen crying in the other perspectives. Only in the first and third perspective. But why, through Tachimaro's eyes, do we see him crying if he wants to make him look bad? Because I think a part of him feels bad about what he did, but he just doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah,
that's an interesting detail. Oh yeah, that too. But he's copying to this, and he's also like a pretty famous bandit by their standards. Why would he need to bring that up? And I think it's because I don't think it's just sympathy. I think it's generally there's a part of him that feels guilty about what he did. But of course, his arrogance, his ego just won't get in the way of that. What I find the most funny was Tachimaro saying, if the wind didn't blow in her hair, I wouldn't have had to kill her.
It's the wind.
It's like literally blaming God for killing someone.
Although that does remind me, Darryl, I don't know if you had this point or not, but there was like a single shot of like when the bandit first sees the woman and she's on the horse with like her veil. I think they were exaggerating a little bit by saying it took them 4 hours to get that shot, but they were trying to get the fan in just the right place to make her veil split evenly just for that shot.
Oh, no. I was talking about the reverse shot earlier of him on the ground when I was just talking about the mirrors. No, that's I love that they say imagine just sitting there for friggin' on hour 3 of like, the wind needs to blow it right. Like, are you kidding me? But that's how great art's made, right?
They had a big like 1 horsepower fan essentially and just trying to blow it in the right way.
I did air quotes for the wind.
Right.
But
reminds me that time I had to use a leaf blower on the set of Into the Hollow.
Oh yeah, that was fun. That was a crazy shot. All 3 of us actually played a vital part in that single shot.
We were the wind.
Shout out to Mason.
And we had to get pretty creative.
It didn't take us 4 hours, also, by the by.
But then again, we weren't filming a nitrate film out in the woods.
Yeah, that's also wasn't made in 1950.
No, we're still better. It's fine.
It's
skill issue.
All digital cameras on a closed set. Anyway.
Well, okay, that's a pretty good segue once again. You always tee me up so well, Devon. I'm gonna toot my own horn for a little bit here. So sorry, folks.
Get ready. It's horn tooting time with MOIRÉ.
So this little section is called The Influence of Rashomon in Taz. So for those that don't know, I have a film company. I started it with my spouse, Jamar Forbes, and I run it with my buddy Tad, and it's called Orange Hat Film Productions. We've been doing, it's been 10 years of a company, but we've been doing features since like 2019. And one of our features was an absolute gem to work on called Taz. And it's super experimental in terms of the big structure. But the majority of the film is a very secluded story shot predominantly in 4:3 high contrast black and white. Sound familiar? For context, I am not a DP that likes to like take or homage a lot. I tend to only do that if a director's like asking for, the Tarantino trunk shot or something like that. And, you always got to say yes to your director. But no, with my own stuff, I tend to just kind of thrive when I embrace my own style. But with Taz, it didn't really work because I was trying to, partially be like this pretentious A24 kind of look, right? So with that said, I took two big inspirations. One was Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse. What? And the other was Akira Kurosawa's Rashomon. I really use these films as like guides. Like they're really masterworks of black and white 4:3, especially like hard lighting. And yeah, navigating the format of a 4:3 aspect ratio for the first time was really difficult. So I tended to actually homage and lean on some stuff. There's a couple of really cool shots. I'm really hoping that Devon and I can put together a little montage that you can see right now. That is some of the direct influences. But yeah, no, lots of just framing wise. I think the whole beginning of Taz truly is like my own version of Rashomon. Of just like these secluded shots that have just this pattern in the way they're cut, and I feel like there's the same DNA in both of the works. I also begin with like a girl in a shower with like just running water is this theme throughout, and I feel like that kind of embodies a lot of Rashomon. But yeah, dude, like, I gotta say, it's just because it's specifically me. It's so rare that this ever happens, so it raises into like a completely different tier for me. I've just got to give it the highest props in the world, and acknowledge that fact, right? Because it's so rare that when something is homage so heavily, I feel like people tend to turn away from it and deny it and make up half truths. But in reality, I tended to borrow a lot, and it looks great. Don't get me wrong. There's lots of me in there too, but it was my starting point where I really built the base look off of. And yeah, hard lighting was a huge part of that. The cinematography was constantly playing with shadows, and the things that really, I took away from it was how they played with shadows. The trapping of the characters in this forest, it feels really dreamlike, and it kind of feels shrouded in mystery, like we were kind of alluding to before, like walking so deeply into it, it's almost like a maze the way they shoot those early shots of him walking through. And yeah, part of that's because Kurosawa gave his DP a lot of freedom on this shoot. They kind of were just making the shot list as they went, which I was really surprised to hear. I guess probably within reason, but yeah, like they kind of just would go off of feeling and try and really represent how each scene was. You know what I mean? Like some scenes are slower and they do cut a little slower and hold, and other scenes are just so crazy and they're moving around so violently, and it's I don't know, like, I gotta stress, for 1950 it blows my mind that this is so relevant and like you can still take such influence from it, and I feel like people weren't necessarily thinking that when I went to this as a big source. I didn't hear many references. The Lighthouse for sure, but I don't know. That's really just the color palette. When it came to actual shots and framing, it was this film that I really leaned on to find it.
I think it's one of those films that have, in a modern context, become so prevalent. I mean, literally the Rashomon effect has been named after this, that it's been so influential you almost don't see its influence, because
Fair.
It's just one of those things where it's become so large, and it was very successful in the West, which they were surprised by when it premiered at Venice Film Festival. Won the Gold Lion Award. It was really highly praised, and I guess it was influential on a lot of things. And I do want to touch a little bit on the music. Fumio Hayazaka was apparently very inspired by a lot of Western composers, Strauss and the likes. And when they were working on this film, he apparently had composed music in a very short amount of time. In fact, had pretty much a demo of it ready when they were still filming. And everyone got to listen to the music, and they thought it was perfect for what they were going for. And they didn't really have a recording of it, but they said that while they were filming, they pretty much had the music in their heads that he had already composed for it, which I think is really rare and awesome, that the music was already prepared in an early state that it influenced the filming to a certain degree, at least while they were working on it, they had it in their minds. And I think the music does fit quite well with the theme of the film. It's very Western in its influence. And then this film also in turn influenced Western media, which I really love seeing this like cross-cultural conversation happening in the music and in, films that happen. I know Akira Kurosawa's work was really influential in George Lucas, and, Star Wars has been influential over there in many ways. And it's just cool looking back and seeing how these things came about. I really love the score of this film. The fidelity of it is a little crushed on like the monaural soundtrack or track of the film, but you can find higher quality versions of it elsewhere. And I do recommend just checking it out. It's very whimsical. I think that's probably the best word I can describe it. But yeah, I love the music in this film.
Yeah, well, whimsical's interesting for the kind of film this is, which is a very tense thriller. And that's not to say like it's all. I think some people kind of mistake whimsical for like cutesy and family friendly, and in this case, that is quite the opposite. Like the music does still know when to fit the tone of the sequence. It's just the overall vibe of it is whimsical.
Oh yeah, you have these beautiful kind of sweeping, fantastic strings, but then you have these lower kind of drones with the drums when things get dark and intense, and it's very, very much orchestrated to fit the picture beautifully. And it really is almost like a lost art form. I mean, there's different ways composers approach scores these days, but I don't know, when it's all done in an analog track like this, and is orchestrated with the full orchestra, it just has a different feel to it. And I really appreciated the music of this film.
Yeah, it's just beautifully composed, beautifully shot. And I feel like some people are going to say it's not like up there with like Kurosawa's best looking films simply because it's just not as ambitious as the samurai films or not as rich as like his more kind of artistic movies like Dreams. But I think there's something about like the more understated, kind of like hyper realist look to the film. Like you mentioned, influences. I think directors like Terrence Malick and especially even Federico Fellini took inspiration from Rashomon as well. So many different filmmakers like Robert Altman took inspiration from this. It's one of those movies where you hear about it all the time in pop culture and you've almost seen it because of that. But you realize you haven't actually watched the film yet.
The way I might describe it is it might be one of your favorite filmmakers' favorite films.
Yeah,
Totally.
that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
This
your dad's favorite
that's
movie.
our clip for this one. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, but no, I think this is an absolutely brilliant film. It's a great starting point to getting into classic Asian cinema, I think. And it's a great example of, there's always more that meets the eye of, reality that we live in. And it's always important to consider other people's perspectives. And I think this film just illustrates that brilliantly. It's also one of my favorite Simpsons jokes. If you look up what Homer has to say about Rashomon, it's great.
Come on, Homer. Japan will be fun. You like Rashomon?
That's not how I remember it.
But no, I would give this a 5 out of 10 as well. 5 out of 5, rather.
Ooh. Whoa, hang on there.
I don't remember it that way.
That's very modern. That's very modern film criticism of you. Just glaze it for an hour and then be like, yeah, it's all right. 5 out of 10.
No. It's a damn near perfect score for me. 9.6.
There you go.
Oh, fair.
Very nice. Yeah, this is one of my favorite movies, which is why I brought it up for the podcast. And it's more than just like a compelling work of art. It's more than just a showcase of using filmmaking to tell a story. It's more than just a showcase of what different perspectives can lend to a story. Like this film genuinely changed like how I saw the world. Like when I was younger, back in college when I watched this movie, I had a very kind of narrow-minded way of looking at the world. Like there's one obvious perspective to consider. And this film opened me up to the concept that I need to take everything with a grain of salt and listen to perspectives I may not have, heard of in the first place. And I know it's, I was going to say the P word. You guys don't like the P word. I got myself there. But I feel like it's kind of that when you say like, oh, like this film made me smarter. It made me a better person. But it really did. really did make me a better person. And I think that's what separates great art from art that truly resonates with you. And I would give this 10 out of 10.
I think when you are being told a story in any point in your life, while the story is being told, it is both true and false. Because it's like Schrodinger's story. You know what I mean? Like you have no idea if you are being lied to, and you have no idea if somebody has the most faith in you that they're sharing their deepest, darkest secret. You can almost never know, and that is a weird magic to life that this movie embodies and brought to the surface in such a way that, like Ian brought to or talked about earlier, it's quite literally affected far beyond the film world and has become a term all in of its own. You see modern films such as The Last Duel. I'm trying to think of others. I might add it in a couple more.
Oh, what about Hero with Jet Li?
Yeah, totally. And it's just about the way you can dissect perspectives and stories. It's almost like the most meta thing that is possible. And that is what elevates this, because yes, like you guys mentioned, I've already spoken about the cinematography, the editing, all the technical aspects. I just wanted to end off by saying, yeah, like this hits in every single possible way. It was the easiest thing to rewatch in terms of, like, I think I watched it 3 times on leading up to the episode, because it was just like, hey, why don't I just throw it on? It's beautiful, it's incredible, it's rewatchable, guys.
It's short.
It's a 5 out of 5.
It's short and sweet.
I mean, like if Devon gave it a full 10 out of 10, it would have been our highest ranked episode ever on this podcast.
Good job, Devon.
Wow,
you suck.
You know what?
We're kicking you off the podcast.
You know what? It is a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, there you go. Peer pressure. Peer pressure always works, but in all seriousness,
we just turned in the minions.
We've peaked on episode 2. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah. No. I'm pretty sure the last movie we're ending on is right in that same realm. So, hell, throughout, man, like the whole reason for this course is I wanted to bring to light a lot of my favorite movies ever, and share, looking at film deeper with everybody else, because, and especially with those, like, I just wanted to give a quick shout out, to all of the people that listened to the first episode. We got a lot of people reaching out, friends of our past from our own film school experience, our fellow students that might have noticed how familiar the list of movies was. So I just want to give a shout out to anybody that reached out. Please, by all means, comment, like, share, do whatever you want to do. You feel free. But it's just, honestly, just join us for the journey. That's all we ask. And
it's all about the journey, not the destination.
This has been great, guys.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know if this will actually be where it goes. We might just end up putting this where we normally do it, because we didn't do it. But I think it's time for a little bit of did you know?
So this film is often credited as the reason the Academy created the Best Foreign Film category.
The temple, which is actually a set, was considered one of the most dangerous sets the crew had ever built. And I quote, one of the set designers even said, "I would rather build 10 actual sets than build this set." And a double fact, 2 for 1, they used up to 10 fire trucks to get the rain effects in the movie. 10. And on top of that, and with the obvious problems of going over old light bulbs and exploding them and pissing off the film studio, said rain had to be filled with black ink. And the reason for that was because it needed to show more on the film. So essentially, everybody was just being drowned in pen fluid for hours on end trying to get this movie made. In such a short period of time, so far back, it really is insane.
I think they used almost an entire village's water supply too, and they were complaining that pretty much all their water was being taken to rain on this fucking set that was then being filled with black ink. So not only was their entire water supply used, it was also essentially poisoned. But all for the beautiful rain of this set.
That's rough. The Rashomon sign from the gate was preserved and kept by director of photography Kazuo Miyagawa at his home until his death in 1999, along with all prints of all 134 films he shot, which is just wild.
Yeah, imagine having a storage unit for all that. Incredible. Oh, yeah. So during the shooting, the cast approached Kurosawa en masse with the script and asked him, what does it mean? The answer he gave at the time is also in his autobiography, is that Rashomon is a reflection of life, and life does not always have clear meanings. So he essentially gave them the David Lynch answer. Do you care to elaborate? Nope.
That's the best way to end it, isn't it?
I think so.
Just sub in the clip.
But yeah, that was a great episode, man. Thank you so much for joining us again, Ian.
Hey, no, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah,
no,
thanks.
it's great being back.
Anytime,
Let's do it again
man.
sometime.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
We love having you on here, man. I know.
Ian Taylor will return for the Handmaiden.
Hell yeah.
It's going to happen. I'm not going to shut up about it until you guys do it.
Hey, man, there's always season 2.
That's true.
There's always going to be season 2.
That's true.
Semester 2.
Ooh,
Yes.
That's good.
Season 201.
No,
whatever you
that's
want.
less good.
Bro, I don't know. I'm trying to find. Okay, there we go. I was looking for my notes. So what were you
wow,
saying?
I'm being a really harsh critic today. I'm sorry. I don't know what got into
Hey
me.
man, it's fine. Get it out while you're still here. So yes, maybe one day the Ian will join us for the Handmaiden. It'll probably be a different movie sooner than that, if I'm going to take a wild guess. But on that topic, we do have some homework for everybody. So 2 weeks from now, we are going to be doing an episode on Night of the Hunter from 1955.
Woo!
And our guest is going to be, drum roll please, Mason Buchko, director of Into the Hollow, which we might have hinted at earlier. So yeah, a rough date for that one's going to be the 27th. So join us at the end of February for, another amazing film. I can't wait to talk about Night of the Hunter, man.
That was a film I've had to cross off my list. I've had it on the list for the longest time, and I finally saw it not too long ago. And yeah, I'm super looking forward to that episode. It's one of those films I don't know if we actually even touched on when we were in film school, but we absolutely should have.
No, this is a rectification. I think this is probably the first rectification we're running into, because otherwise, spoiler alert for most folks, I was using our original courses as a guide, kind of putting together the first 2 years of our film course to get the essentials. So Night of the Hunter is an addition, Exorcist is an addition, King of Comedy, and then Lost Highway. Maybe did we do anything on Lynch? No, I don't think we did anything on Lynch in school.
So that's another rectification.
Yeah.
Well, we watched a clip from Blue Velvet, I think.
Oh yes, we did. We watched the ear bit from.
Yep, that's near.
I did. But then and then There Will Be Blood. That's debatable. That was really recent by the time we were in film school. And then Interstellar and Blade Runner, which came out after we were in film school. So lots of rectifications. But we wanted to start, pretty on course with what we began with, and kind of, steer away slowly. So the first slight turn is coming up next week. Oh man.
This is the only podcast that asks you to do homework.
Yeah, but it's so worth it for these conversations. So please join us next week, and class dismissed.
Hell yeah.
See ya.
Bring.
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 Does us being can't stand.